Welcome to this explainer. You're probably watching this right now over a Wi-Fi or wired network, and that seamless connection you're enjoying, it's actually powered by a very specific kind of invisible magic. We barely even think about it, right? But there's a massive amount of behind-the-scenes negotiation that happens the literal second you connect your device to a network, all just to make sure everything works perfectly.
Just imagine if connecting to Wi-Fi took you 10 minutes of manual typing every single time. As one of our sources points out, assigning network addresses manually for a couple of computers at home, not a huge deal. But what if you're running an office of 200 computers, or a coffee shop with hundreds of guests rotating through all day? The pure chaos of manually configuring IP addresses for every single one of those devices would be an absolute nightmare. And that sets up the exact problem that our hero protocol solves.
Let's quickly contrast these two approaches. First up, we've got static IP assignment. This is your old school, manual, permanent, and honestly pretty tedious method. It means a human administrator actually has to sit down and type in a dedicated IP address for a device. Now that's great for a permanent server or maybe a network printer, but it's absolutely terrible for your smartphone. On the flip side, we have DHCP. It is dynamic, completely automatic, and incredibly easy. It handles all that configuration for you in literally a fraction of a second.
So what exactly is it? Well, DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. If we look at its formal definition in RFC 2131, it's a network administration protocol that automatically assigns IP addresses and network settings to devices. Basically, its entire goal in life is to give a device a digital identity so it can actually communicate on the network, all without a human ever having to lift a finger.
Now, this invisible conversation, it happens through specific digital doors on your network, which you might know as UDP or User Datagram Protocol ports. The DHCP server, which, by the way, is usually built right into your home router or managed by a dedicated server if you're in a big enterprise, it listens for requests on port 67. Meanwhile, your client device, so your laptop or your phone, is dedicated to port 68 to catch the server's responses.
Okay, let's dive right into this. How does it actually work in practice? The whole process is this lightning-fast four-step handshake known by the acronym DORA. That stands for Discover, Offer, Request, and Acknowledge. And get this entire exchange usually finishes in under a second. Literally, right before your Wi-Fi icon even stops spinning.
All right, step one is Discover. When a new client device first connects to the network, it doesn't have an IP address yet, right? So it can't send normal traffic. Instead, it sends out a broadcast message from a source address of 0.0.0.0 to a destination of 255.255.255.255. It is essentially just standing there shouting to the entire local network, "Hey, are there any DHCP servers out there?"
Which brings us to step 2, the offer. The DHCP server hears that shout, picks a free IP address from its available pool, and proposes it back to the device. One of our sources actually anthropomorphizes this perfectly. They describe the server as this friendly guy basically saying, "Cool, bro, I've got some IP addresses. How about this one?" From there, the device immediately jumps to steps 3 and 4, request and acknowledge, sealing the digital deal. The client enthusiastically accepts the very first offer it gets by broadcasting a request. Now, broadcasting this request is actually absolutely crucial. Why? Because it tells any other listening servers on the network to take their offered IPs back and put them back into their pool. Finally, the chosen server finalizes the whole assignment with an acknowledge message, officially handing over the address.
Moving on to Section 1, renting, not owning.
You see, your phone or laptop doesn't actually own its IP address. It's really just renting a digital apartment from your router for a set period of time. And this makes sense, right? It stops IP addresses from being totally wasted when you disconnect or throw an old computer away. Here's how that lease cycle actually works. Let's say your router hands out a standard 24-hour lease. At hour 0, the lease starts, but your device is smart. It doesn't wait until the last possible minute to renew its rent. At exactly 50% of the lease, so 12 hours in, it hits what's called the T1 renewal timer. It proactively asks the original server to extend the rent. Now, if that server happens to be offline and the device hits 87.5% or 21 hours, it hits the T2 rebinding timer. At this point, it gets a bit desperate and broadcasts to any server on the network, basically begging for an extension. And if it hits that 24-hour mark with no answer, boom. Expiration ends the whole shebang and it gets completely kicked off the network.
So the crucial thing to remember here is that a DHCP lease isn't just an IP address. It actually includes these awesome bonus items called DHCP options, which give your device some really vital navigation tools. For example, Option 1 provides the subnet mask, which defines the local network boundary. Option 3 tells your device the default gateway, meaning the router it needs to use to reach the internet. Option 6 provides the DNS server, so you can actually load websites by their names.
and option 51 tells it the lease time, which we literally just talked about.
All right, section 2, need a middleman?
Now, what happens in a massive enterprise network? Places where routers intentionally block those initial broadcast shouts because the DHCP server is sitting on a completely different network segment. Well, you're going to need a middleman. Enter the DHCP relay agent. A relay agent is usually just a router that's been configured to act as a helpful intermediary. It listens for those local DHCP Discover broadcasts from new clients. Then, it slaps on a special GAGDR tag, which stands for gateway address, just to let the server know exactly which pool to assign the IP from. After that, it directly unicasts the message to the distant DHCP server. It's brilliant because it seamlessly preserves that whole client-server communication structure across different subnets.
That brings us to section 3, when DHCP fails.
So what exactly happens when your device's Discover shout is met with absolute, utter silence from the network? Maybe the server is down, or the address pool is totally exhausted. Well, if you've ever checked your network settings and seen an IP address starting with 169.254, you've essentially witnessed a DHCP panic attack. This is called an APIPA address. It basically means your device gave up waiting for a server, threw its hands up, and assigned itself a useless, isolated address, effectively disconnecting itself from the internet. So the next time you see that specific number, you know exactly where the networking process broke down, and you know for sure that you probably need to go check your physical cables or just reboot your router.
Finally, section 4, the IPv6 future.
As networks continue to evolve, those noisy broadcasts of IPv4 we talked about, they're being replaced by targeted, highly efficient multicast messages in IPv6. And because of this shift, our classic DORA acronym actually changes to SAR, which stands for Solicit, Advertise, Request, and Reply. It's really the exact same fundamental concept of finding a server and negotiating an address, just a bit more refined. It even shifts over to new UDP ports, port 546 for the clients to listen on, and port 547 for the servers and relay agents.
So here's a thought for you. The next time you walk into a coffee shop or your office, open up your laptop and connect to the Wi-Fi instantly, ask yourself, who is my device actually talking to? Remember the invisible, rapid-fire negotiation that literally just occurred in milliseconds to make your entire digital life possible. It really is a complete marvel of automated networking. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helped you decode the magic happening right behind your screen.